Good day, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the microorganism Artyfechinostomum malayanum. The WHO. Artyfechinostomum malayanum are species of digenetic trematode in the family of Echinostomatidae. Echinostomatidae are family of trematodes in the order of Plagiocchiida. Plagiocchiida is a large order of trematodes, synonymous to Echinostomida. So, Trematoda is a class within the phylum of Plathyminthes. It includes two groups of parasitic flatworms known as flukes, which means that Artyfechinostomum malayanum is some kind of parasitic flatworms. So they are phylum of relatively simple bilaterian unsegmented soft-bodied invertebrates, which means that they do not have a backbone. They are also acolymates, having no body cavity, and they have no specialized circulatory and respiratory organs, which restricts them to having flattened shapes that allow oxygen and nutrients to pass through their bodies by diffusion. So yeah, the digestive cavity has only one opening for both ingestion and egestion. As a result, the food cannot be processed continuously. So, Artyfechinostomum malayanum, where can we get it? The first known intermediate hosts of Artyfechinostomum malayanum include freshwater snails. So, yeah, we can get it in freshwater, in snails. For example, that of Indoplenornis exhaustus and Rheolus convexuculus. So, these are air-breathing freshwater snail. So, also, in 1943, snails purchased from a market of Phnom Penh, Cambodia. So, they were discovered from a snails purchased in Phnom Penh, Cambodia market. They were isolated from the snails using artificial digestion technique and were orally fed to two hamster, one rat, and two mice to obtain adult flukes. So, by this study, it has been first confirmed that the life cycle of Artyfechinostomum malayanum exists in Cambodia. And with this, along with this study, most infections of Artyfechinostomum malayanum are high in countries like Cambodia, Philippines, and India. So, let's talk about it. The infections, the disease we can get from it. Most likely gastrointestinal infections. A small number of fatal cases of Artyfechinostomum malayanum in which heavy worm burdens cause anemia, malnutrition, or intestinal perforation, or like that of ulcer. So, Artyfechinostomum malayanum infections in the Philippines. So, yeah, there's an existence of this. In 2002, the Department of Health Provincial Health Team of Surigao del Norte reported 102 cases of fasciculid-like infections in the municipality of Santa Monica, Surigao Island, the Philippines. Fascicula hepatica infection was the initial diagnosis considered. So yeah, they diagnosed it because they discovered large percolate eggs having been found in routine stool examinations. So conducted during the systematis surveys. So as we all know nga, nadyo yung systematis survey seminars and pangatag pa sila drug paraan here in the Philippines. So we're not new to it. But then in 2005, followed a field investigation to determine the cumulative prevalence of intestinal helminthic infections in adult patients whose conditions had been previously diagnosed as fasciculid-like infection and to determine the causative species of trematode. So yeah, they conducted a follow-up study. So like unsa gid ang naka-cause gid nga organism aning nga ilang first nga diagnosis. So the study consists of 70 adult patients from Barangay Libertad. So you can search the whole document in the internet, but to sum up, ang ilang result, 3 out of 70 patients had 13 adult flukes in their stomach. Microscopy showed small leaf-like flukes about 8 to 9 millimeter long and 2.5 to 3.5 millimeter wide. So, after the organisms were processed and stained with acetocarmine and fast green stains, diagnostic features of Echinostoma malayanum were noted. So, ito nga na conclude nila sa ilang kadua nila nga investigation nga muna ang reason sa naitabo nga sakit, infection. In terms of eating habits, so additionally, in terms of eating habits, patients reported that fish were commonly eaten raw, so hilaw, like i-dip in salt and vinegar, or locally known as kinilaw. Also, other methods of fish preparations are tinola, ginataan, sinugba, and all equinos to all of these infected patients had history of having eaten snails and alcohol. So yeah, we should be careful on the food that we eat. Let's talk about the life cycle of Artyfechinostomum malayanum. So, like many trematodes, these parasitic flukes undergo multi-host or indirect life cycle, because a host can be a start of a life cycle, like multi-host, like indirect lang process, like dili gid siya stick in a single pattern. So yung ana siya. So let's talk about this image. Number 1, the unembryonated eggs passed in feces. So feces of a lot of hosts, like pwede feces sa duck, sa human, so yun na. Unembryonated eggs are passed in feces of infective definitive host. That's 1. And in 2, they develop in water. So kanang number 3, Miraxida usually takes about 3 weeks to mature before hatching. So after hatching, they can now swim freely and penetrate the first intermediate host, which is number 4, the snail. So the intermolluscan stages includes 4A, the sporocyst stage, 1 or 2 generations of radiae, that's 4B, and a cercariae, that's 4C, which are released from the snail. The cercariae may insist as metacercariae within the same first intermediate host, or leave the host and penetrate the new second intermediate host. That's number 5, muna yung new second intermediate host. The definitive host becomes infected after eating metacercariae in the infected second intermediate host. That's number 6. Okay? Now, metacercariae exist in the duodenum, that's 7, and that's number 7, and adults reside in small intestine for some species, occasionally in bile ducts or large intestine. So, yan din mag-reside ang katong mga adult flukes sa tiyan, pwede sa tao. So, yun nga na ang iyang life cycle. So, most hosts includes animals like birds or mga kanang carnivores. Okay? So, let's talk about the diagnosis or treatment. So, it is possible to eradicate liver flukes completely. An infection will usually be treated with a drug called triclebendazole. It's given orally, usually in 1 or 2 doses, and most people respond well to this treatment. So, pathogenicity likely varies depending on the infecting species. Carthural inflammation often occurs due to the penetration of sharp spine color into the intestinal mucosa, which creates ulcerative lesions. So, muna nga mga microorganisms, or like if may bacteria inside your body, it can promote ulcer. In heavy infections, gastrointestinal signs symptoms may occur. Peripheral eosinophilia is usually present. A small number of fatal cases of Artyfechinostomum malayanum, in which heavy worm burdens cause anemia, malnutrition, or intestinal perforation. So yung ana. So that's the end of my report. I hope you learned something about Artyfechinostomum malayanum. Thank you for listening.